dear participants, partners, members of the CEU community, speakers, students, and guests. It is a great pleasure to welcome you at the International Symposium Education for Europe of Rights, on behalf of the coordinators of the project Education for Europe of Rights. The symposium addresses the status quo, challenges, and possible improvements in the field of education for human rights, democratic citizenship, and European values, with an emphasis on all countries, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Romania, and Hungary, in an international perspective. I'm Max Steuer, one of the project coordinators, and I'm here together with my colleagues Antal Berkes, Diana Grebels, and Adrien Mirčák. It is a privilege for me to moderate and speak during this introductory session. Before I share a few remarks on the purpose and aims of the symposium, I would like to introduce you the representatives of our main partners, without whom this event would not have been possible. The EER project is one of the jackpot projects of the alumni network of the Allianz Cultural Foundation, which stands behind and generously supports the Allianz Summer and Alumni Academies. I welcome among us Lucia Obst, the coordinator of the Allianz Alumni Network and Program, and look forward to her opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Dear students, dear guests and participants in this international symposium, dear partners and friends. My name is Lucia, and it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome you all in the name of the Allianz Cultural Foundation to these two upcoming days filled with exchange and dialogue, food and drink, as I've been told, and some networking, team building, where we can all come together. It is particularly in these times, I would say, of turbulence, maybe, of uncertainty across a lot of countries in Europe, that it is particularly important that we come together as a group, that we come together in solidarity and mutual understanding, but also a willingness to debate, really, and to discuss the topics of this event, which are human rights, democratic citizenship, and European values. I would say Europe is currently facing a bit of a paradoxical situation. On the one hand, for the first time in history, a large member state has left the European Union, the United Kingdom, but still, I would say the remaining members are, well, eager to show a kind of shared optimism. I think the press speaks of a renewed European momentum. But on the other hand, it appears that European societies have never been quite so polarized along political, social, identity lines, and so are member states with regards to EU democratic values, to migration issues, or the aftermath of the economic crisis, for instance. And even with the appearance of new political actors and the rise of populist movements, even on a national or regional level, institutions are or have become the focus of inner European conflict. Actually, the institution that we stand in today, the esteemed Central European University, has in the past year come under quite a bit of pressure from its regime. And therefore I find it that we're making a very powerful statement by being here today, by organizing this event here in close cooperation with the CEU. And I find it increasingly important that we organize these kind of events to support each other, but also to stand up for our shared values and rights. For this reason, it is a very particular pleasure that the Allianz Cultural Foundation has the opportunity, really, to support this kind of a project, Education for Europe of Rights. For, as has just been mentioned, the organizers of this event are actually alumni of our foundation. The Allianz Cultural Foundation offers young Europeans who have participated in one of its summer academies before the chance to actively work on shaping a common, shared future Europe, both in dialogue, but also on very tangible projects such as this one. And so we're very proud that these talented young people have managed to really filter out what is important in our society today, but also to take the next step and to initiate or take the initiative to carry on their knowledge and their values on to another group of young, talented people, and that's all of you here today. So welcome, and I hope that at the end of these 2 days, you all will also feel somewhat empowered in one way or another to shape our common shared Europe in a sense of solidarity, plurality, and fairness above all, I would say. So thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you for the kind words, Lucia, which also put our event into the social and political context of these times. The Allianz Summer Academy would not work without dedicated coordinators at the partner universities who prepare groups of students to become part of this global network and refine their arguments about the questions they examine for their ASA projects. At CEU, Marie-Pierre Granger, Associate Professor at CEU School of Public Policy, International Relations Department and Legal Studies Department, coordinates the ASA. Half of the current project team has been among the students she prepared for the ASA in selected years together with Stefan Roch, who is with us taking pictures. We are particularly glad to welcome you and thank you in advance for moderating one of the panels this afternoon. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Max, and welcome everyone here at CEU for what promises to be a very exciting and enlightening series of panels on educating for a Europe of right. And I'm really curious and really looking forward to the debates and discussion which we will have in the coming days. My name is Marie-Pierre Granger. Thank you very much, Max, for the introduction, but I would like to also share the glory, if you want, or if you can put it this way, with Stefan, who is over there and who really helped me over the last 4 years with coordinating the student team from CEU, and we wouldn't be here today without Stefan as well. So thank you very much, Stefan, for helping and actually being here to support this Allianz Summer Academy project. I will not say too much about it because my colleagues already have explained in a few words what this project is about, but I would really like to insist on the fact that it's really a magic mix. And what we have today, this project on education for a Europe of rights, and the symposium today would not happen if it wasn't for the support provided by the Allianz Cultural Foundation for this kind of intensive academic cooperation project where students from different European universities come together to discuss the current challenges and opportunities for Europe. And from these discussions and debates, which really take place in a bottom-up manner, the students are really in charge of defining what the problems are, what the questions are, what the solutions are. We really end up with fantastic recommendations at the end of the Summer Academy, but also with follow-up projects such as this one. And in fact, I would like to say a few words about a project we hosted already a year and a half ago, also organized by former students from Central European University and alumni of the Allianz Summer Academy, which was a workshop bringing together, I think it was more than 50 civil society organizations supporting and helping refugees along the Balkan route in the years 2015-2016 to share good practices, to share advice, to share knowledge on how to provide better support for the refugees along the migration route. And it was an extremely successful event with a very interesting contribution, and I think it really helped developing a more coordinated approach to supporting refugees. And the event that we have today, this Education for a Europe of Right, and this particular symposium is really of the same caliber. The idea is to bring together stakeholders, that is policymakers, but also those who are really at the heart of the education system, the students, the pupils, to reflect on what it is to teach and to educate future citizens of Europe. And when Max first presented the project, I think it was a year and a half ago, was it? And I was really happy and very excited. And I really thought, yes, this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to bring together people across border and get them to think together across hierarchies, across borders, across generations as to what can work in order to achieve the Europe that we want to have tomorrow. That is a Europe of citizens that engage with each other, that respect each other despite differences, that want to participate in public life, that want to bring a contribution to change, to improve the way society works, and this is exactly what we need. And this really is something that also came out of many of the summer academic projects. Quite often, the question of what are European values and how are they defined, and how to ensure respect for human rights, and how to ensure that citizens participate in public life, and in which ways, and inventing new modes of participation, were often at the heart of the reports that were produced by the student team, at the heart of the discussion that we had in the summer academy in Kempferhausen. And one of the solutions, one of the policy recommendations that comes back almost year after year or generation after generation is that we need to do something about education. And this is exactly what you are doing. So thank you very much, Max, Diana, Antal, and also all the other alumni who directly or indirectly contributed to this project, for putting it together and making it happen. Thank you very much to our CU partner, the Human Rights Student Initiative, for supporting the organization and for helping also putting together the program and inviting participants. And thank you to the Allianz Cultural Foundation for their support over the year, and also support in this politically challenging time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marie, for your opening remarks, which also highlighted the methods, the approach that we chose when organizing this symposium, which are based on supporting inclusiveness and open debate. And last but not least, we are very fortunate, as Marie already mentioned, to cooperate on this symposium with CEU's Human Rights Initiative, which is an awareness-raising and capacity-building organization, I would say quite unique in the university environment. And thanks to the Human Rights Initiative, we can also have this event at CEU, which I think itself embodies the principles of critical thinking and open discussion. So exactly in the spirit of that method of inclusiveness and openness that we aim to have for this symposium. Both Human Rights Initiative program coordinator, Zsófia Victoria Shuba, and project manager, Belén and Amil, have been essential partners for all aspects of the symposium. And I would like to invite Belén now to share a few remarks on behalf of the Human Rights Initiative.
Thank you very much, Max, for your introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name is Belén Amil. I'm the project manager at Human Rights Initiative. And on behalf of my unit and my colleague Zsófia Shuba, I want to give you a very warm welcome here to CEU. It's a great pleasure for us to be co-organizers of this event. As Max already told, the Human Rights Initiative, or HRSI, is an awareness-raising and capacity-building unit based at Central European University, whose main mission is to promote social engagement. We were founded in 1999 by the students of the CEU Legal Studies Human Rights Program, and since then we have grown into an internationally recognized human rights organization, focusing on youth involvement, education, and active student participation. It is for this reason that we consider this international symposium on education for a Europe of rights to be of key relevance to our goals. As a human rights organization based in a higher education institution, we cannot stress enough the importance of youth active participation in human rights and democratic citizenship for the building of a sustainable, equal societies, where knowledge of our rights and respect for the rights of others are not a privilege or an exception, but a day-to-day reality. I want to give special thanks to Marie-Pierre for reaching out to us as partners for this event and putting us in contact with Max and Antal, I lost him. There he is. And also thanks to my colleague Sofia, that is not here with us today, who worked very hard in the organization of this symposium. I wish us all a very productive, rewarding, and above all, empowering encounter. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Anna. And in the spirit of building bridges, which was emphasized in several previous remarks, we have today among us various stakeholders. We have experts from each of the 4 countries, which I mentioned, and we are very grateful that they found the time to join and contribute to this symposium. This is particularly true given that we face some challenges in the process, at least because in some cases governmental authorities were reluctant to send their representatives or even prohibited them to speak in this forum. You might hear about this more during the upcoming panels. This experience to me underlines the importance to discuss our subject in focus, so often neglected by governmental politicians and the public discourse. And in fact, I could hardly find any quote, for instance, from the Slovak or even the Czech Prime Minister on human rights, democratic citizenship, education, which I think illustrates the problem itself. But among us in this room are also talented students from each of these countries, from high schools or from early university level, who will soon share their perspective on human rights, democratic citizenship, and European values education. That is, which they are living through, or at least they are supposed to be living through these years in their schools and universities. And I'm very curious to hear more about their insights. Here I would like to encourage you, the students, to interact with the experts, with other guests, vice versa as well, so that we can share each other's knowledge and experience. Besides our public panels and discussions, the students have already engaged in a team-building activity moderated by Diana. Thank you, Diana, for that. And will participate at a workshop on the practice of non-formal peer education for human rights and democracy, so that they can become ambassadors among their peers in the field. This way, our symposium, as it was already indicated, aims to make a contribution to the general awareness about human rights and democracy among young people. This is much needed, given that in several countries the support for extreme right and populist or anti-European parties has risen worryingly in the recent years, resulting in new parties of these kinds entering legislatures and possibly even having influence over governmental policies in some countries. We also aim that the ideas and thoughts presented at this symposium remain in focus beyond the event itself. This is why we will try to record all public panels and why we prepared a draft memorandum. You should have received a copy of at the door. There are some more as well. We invite all of you to familiarize yourself with this draft, to discuss and criticize it during the respective panels. Our concluding session tomorrow, which will be moderated by Antal, is mainly devoted to discuss the memorandum in depth, based on the insights from the previous sessions as well. We will have, in the end, a final memorandum, and I expect the final debate about it will be quite exciting, so don't miss it if you can. Of course, we hope to have enough time for discussion during the other panels, which will also allow you to share your comments there. We wish you an enjoyable and productive event, which will enrich and stimulate thoughts of each of you, and look forward to all your comments and presentations. I will now give the floor to Diana to moderate the presentations of our student participants on the status quo of human rights, democratic citizenship, and European values education. And I thank you very much for coming, for joining us, and for your attention.
Thank you very much, Max, for having stressed the importance of this project and for the other people who have had interventions in the opening and made the opening remarks. It is indeed the background that we found common on Tal, Adrien, myself and Max, for creating this project. We thought that the countries we live in or where we have studied in face similar challenges when it comes to human rights education. These four countries being the Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania and Slovakia. The project includes groups of students, high school and also university students from these four countries who have been selected on behalf of their interest for improving things, for discussing the challenges that human rights face and education faces in Central and Central Eastern European countries. We considered that it would be very important for each of you, for each group, to have the opportunity to have an overview of their situation, where things stand, and we will start, if possible, with the Czech group in alphabetical order of the English name of the country. So just to be fair. So maybe you would like to present yourselves and say a bit more about your background and then about the situation in the Czech Republic.
I didn't expect this, but okay, I will start. I would say that we three are from Czech Republic, and if I will talk about human rights education in Czech Republic, from my point of view, I'm not studying grammar school. I'm studying technical high school. So maybe the girls know something about better situation, but on my school the situation is clearly bad. we are not learning about human rights. We are not learning nothing about EU, about these international organizations like UN and things like that. So the only way how to get information about it is to get interested into it, and on my own, like I am doing. I could say we have, on our school, we have 1 hour of civics a week, and we are talking abstract things like history of philosophy and psychology. But we are, even when in our country were elections, it was in October, last month, so we didn't talk about election, even the teacher even didn't meant the election once. So if we asked him why we are not talking about election, about situation in Czech Republic, and about all these things, he said that we want to we don't want to learn. So that's the reason why we are asking about elections. So I think it's a problem in Czech Republic. Maybe girls will tell you something about the situation in grammar school.
So we have 2 lessons per week of social science in my school, which provide us insight to these topics, but only in general. And so we learn only basic facts and some historical information. So let's say in a formal way, like in like every subject, because in Czech Republic isn't education system much practical.
I have some opinions, Sabina, because we are studying on similar school, so we have 2 lessons of some social science, and it's all.
That's fine.
Do you debate the topics that you are receiving and the information you are subject to, or it is just a matter of learning by heart?
It's just a matter of learning. I think I said it a little bit before, but we have to just learn the information, learn the dates, learn the names of antique philosophists and of psychologists, and things like that, and we are not talking, we are not critical thinking, we aren't even not we can't think in school. Just you have to learn all the informations. You have to memorize informations, and that's not good. I think in Czech school that there have to be more critical thinking and more talking, more discussion, and it's not, in my opinion.
And what institutions, are you aware of the institutions who are designing the curricula, which could be approached to give a more critical perspective and intercultural?
Yeah. I think that's maybe the reason why we are here, because everyone who wants to know something about it, and I know there are people in Czech Republic who want, so they have to participate in some programs where can they learn these things. And it's like, for example, Prague Student Summit or Olympics of Human Rights. So these are, and I think maybe these things will not be here if there will be excellent system, excellent education system in Czech Republic. So maybe it's good that there are some problems, because it encourages the young people to create things like that, things like Prague Student Summit, and they are giving their free time to learning and they want to know something about human rights, about democracy, about international institutions. So maybe it's good that I see around me a lot of young people which are interested into things which happens around them.
Yes, but also there are many students which don't care about these topics, and on the Prague Student Summit and things like that goes only the minority of the students. So that's the problem.
Of course, that's true, but I think it's good that there is minority which is interested into.
Are there association or other types of informal platforms which might influence these things for going for the better, maybe not now, but in 5 or 10 years for the curriculum?
Like
educational associations.
Yeah, maybe some sort of student union but these are not the official organizations they can influence the government and things like that, but maybe today the government is not forced to listen to them, so they don't actually. So I think there are some organizations, but they don't have much influence.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions from our side regarding the situation in the Czech Republic? Yes?
I was just wondering whether there is a difference between the public school and private school sector. What your impressions are? If there are any schools which you think are more progressive?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I am studying private school, but as I said, there is a bad situation. But I know about Prague Human Science. I don't know the exact name of the school, but maybe American Academy. It's next. There is more private schools in Prague, which are bringing the interesting methods to education, and I read about it a lot, and I think there are schools which can make the situation better, but as I said, nobody from current government is listening to them and their thoughts. They are they are visiting schools all around the world, and they are looking how the education works in different countries, and they are trying to get the best things and apply them to the Czech system, but the government is not helping them. So.
But also we've got a lot of private schools where you just
Pay and get
and get it just because of money.
Do you get the critical thinking and the analysis or in the private system? Not really.
I think it depends on teacher a lot. And as I said, our civic teacher is, I think, in my personal opinion, it's not a good teacher. So by him, I don't get any encouragement to, or critical thinking and discussion and things like that. So maybe from some teacher, yeah, but it depends.
Would it be a reason that teachers and professors who are teaching at private schools have been exposed to international curricula and have studied abroad, and the others have not?
Yeah, maybe. As I said, as I talked about the private schools in Prague, which are trying to apply the foreigner methods, I think the principal of one of the schools was studying abroad, and he is a member of one political party, but he has a very nobody in that party is listening to him, and I think these people have to be the party's experts on education and things like that, but they are not.
Yes, please, Lydia.
Could you please spend a bit more words on telling us about the difference between private and public schools in the Czech Republic, also by telling us how the population in general perceives them, if private schools are seen as very good ones, or if the general opinion is tilted towards the public system, which is thought to be more effective.
Again, I think it depends on people and on school, but in general, I could say that, for example, in my case, my school, as I said, is private, and if you go to the city, and if you are talking with people, they will say you, wow, that's a hard school, it's hard to get there, it's good, yeah? And I'm just laughing, and it isn't. But in general, I think a lot of private schools today in Czech Republic are the schools that just take your money and give you the grades and let you do what you want, and you just are giving them a lot of money and money, and it's all about that maybe. But I think it depends on school. The public can see a good schools and can recognize a good schools. And as I said, the maybe 2-3 schools in Prague, Open Gate, or American Academy, they are recognized as elite schools, and they are successful, and the public in general can see it and can recognize it. So that's the situation. I think, but there is a lot of good schools in eyes of public, which are not private, which are public too. So I think in general there is not one view of private schools and public schools, and private are good and public are bad or that way. It depends on school, and public has a different views on different schools.
And do you think there are many private schools in the Czech Republic, also considering that it was a communist country? So,
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are there many private schools with respect to the total, considering that it was a communist country? So I might expect that certain services were state provided.
I think today the situation is that there is too much schools in general. The schools doesn't have a lot of students like mine. In my year there is like 60 students, and in year under mine it's only 40, I think, and next year was even worse, and things are getting worse with a number of students. But in general, I know that today there is a lot of schools, of private schools, which are created now in these days, and they can be successful. They can bring the people to study them, and I think there is always a place for a good school. So if there is now there can work yeah, the schools can fight for students. You know what I mean? So I think this principle of capitalism can work in schools maybe too, because if you are a student, if you want to get a good education, so you will choose a school which you know will learn you something. So I don't think it's a problem that there is a lot of schools. I think the bad schools will just quit, and that's the thing.
Thank you very much for your remarks. We need to give floor to the next team. We will definitely have the chance to discuss more about the issues of performance, if there is a barrier between private and public schools. Maybe the Hungarian group can take over with the remarks.
So hi everyone, we the three of us represent the Hungarian group. We attend the same high school here in Budapest, the capital of Hungary, and we believe that the education of human rights is something that we not talk really often, and it's, I would say, really isolated topics, or I would say that there are some bubbles where we were able to learn a lot about our basic human rights, and were able to discuss topics in terms of human rights, the future of the European Union as an institute or as a region, Europe. But everyday life and normally we not often talk about these issues, and I think the reason behind we just neglect these topics is that we, Hungary, as a post-communist country, are taught to be silent, and when we talk about rights, we can't talk about rights without obligation, which I personally think is a really bad perspective, and the government authorities are not force us to learn more about our basic rights, because they are aware of the fact that during the 40 years of communist rule, we didn't know anything about our rights, and we were silent. So they were able to do whatever they want. And they see that this situation, when the citizens of a country don't know their basic human rights, it's much easier for them to just do whatever they want. And I also think that the problem is that there are some really good opportunities to learn more about human rights, such as this event right now, and there are some really good places, like really good universities or schools, where we're able to learn more about this issue. For example, the Central European University, but we must be aware of the fact that it's a private school and it's just one example, and the problem is that it's just not as common as it should be to talk about human rights in general.
So as Bendagu said, we all go to the same public school. Even though we have one lecture on like kind of social sciences, but it's in a lecture format, so we can discuss or debate on things, and also it's focused more on facts. So we learned about the European Union, but like from a perspective of history. So when countries joined, and not its principle and what its aim is, or the benefits and disadvantages, but just the historical facts, which I think is not what this class or what this lecture should be about. So we don't really have many opportunities to discuss and listen to the other's opinion. We just sit and listen to the teacher, and we don't really have opportunities to like say our own thoughts.
Yeah, but if somebody is really interested in human rights, for example, we entered a competition called Amnesty International.
Amnesty International Human Rights Competition.
Kinda, and yes, if somebody is really interested in this topic, it's possible to go deeper.
Yeah, and also there are many non-governmental organizations here in Hungary and mostly in Budapest, and they often have opportunities for high school students, like we are, for example, this Amnesty International competition, but they are also looking for, even as young people as we are, to be a member of their community, which we are, and we learned about human rights and their violation there. But these are just extracurricular activities, so in the education system, it's not like blended deeply.
I would like to also say that Christy also mentioned that most of these non-governmental organizations are located in the capital, and me, because originally I was not born in the capital of Hungary, and I frequented another high school in the countryside for several years, and I see the really huge and disappointing difference between the capital city, with one really well developed, really more multicultural city, and a huge gap between the rest of the country, which I think is a really big problem, because many people who are not living here or not frequented such good high schools or universities as, for example, we do here in the capital, just basically don't have the opportunities or the resources to educate themselves about this topic. And I think this is something what the government should focus on to improve the situation.
Besides the topics that are common to what your colleagues have said, I was wondering if you can identify any improvement or worsening of the situation of human rights in the past years, and the way human rights are perceived in Hungary.
There's certainly been a worsening of human rights. I think the three of us can agree on this, because of the rise of populism, politics, and the political discourse became just more and more populist and filled with hatred and hatred. Many people today think that human rights is something that is unnecessary, and they just prevent us from moving forward, and we should not focus on it, which is really sad, given the fact that when during the changement of the political regime back in the 90s. It was more about the human rights because back that days we stand up for our human rights and we wanted to live in a democratic society where then that time human rights were indeed in focus. But today, even though it was just like 25 years ago, we don't really talk about human rights, maybe just in negative aspect.
And at school, has there been any change in the way history is taught, for example, when it comes to the topics tangent to human rights? You haven't? No.
Like, since we are just we're attending high school nowadays, we don't know how was the situation before, but I think it was always the case because of how our society, the Hungarian society, civilized that we should not talk about our rights. We should focus more on our obligation rather than our rights, which is also mentioned that in, for example, when a teacher said something about rights, he or she must mention that, yeah, even though if you have rights, you also have obligations. And many people said, everybody can complain about their rights, but they just don't want to do the obligations. And so I think we as the Hungarian society should radically rethink how we approach human rights, rights in general, and such things.
Any question?
Thank you very much for your input. It was really surprising for me, this idea of rights and obligations, as if human rights were not unconditional rights, if I understood correctly. I wanted to ask you about education on women's rights, sexual and reproductive rights. What are your impressions on that? I don't know if the three of you attend public school. Yeah. Okay. If you can maybe share a short comment on your impressions about that.
So, for example, I'm very interested in women's rights and identity in general. Next year, I hope to attend a university course on this topic. As I can see, it really is kind of a taboo here in public schools. We don't even learn about women's history in our history class. There was one time during the First World War when we learned that topic. That's when women gained the right to vote in Great Britain, but it wasn't mentioned, and I asked the teacher if we could talk about that for like 10 seconds, and he mentioned the names of the most influential women during the vote for women's rights, but he changed the names of two very important women, Emmeline Pankhurst and Emily Davidson, and this was the only time that we talked about women in history, and even that was messed up. So this kind of shows the situation.
Yeah, maybe because we really want to rely on this traditional approach of how women should be a member of our society, that they should not be able to work, and men are the ones who have more rights. But it's because of our political system, I think it can link back to this topic. So yeah, we don't really know anything about human rights, reproductive rights. Not even it's not even a taboo. But maybe like human rights a little bit, like that's over the suffrage movement, and that's it. And with all the other things, now we don't really learn about them because yeah, it's a taboo indeed.
Yes, for me, I've always gone to public schools during my 12 years, and there has been only one hour class on, for example, sex education, and it was like in a very conservative way. So they only taught about the danger of like being involved in sexual relationship, and not like the intimate part, or not even about the concept of family or relations, like how to come over, like or how to deal with grief or something, which I think we should have and maybe like involved in this type of class, but we really don't have that, and I see it as like very big disadvantage to the education system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering if you can sort of address questions to your professors, and afterwards, how do you respond? And if you talk about the second question, if you talk about the Roma minority, or if you talk about refugees, since the official policy is against migration, or how your professors address this issue in classes?
Well, I would like to have some comments most about the Roma minority, because we have these civic lessons once a week, and currently we are learning about Gypsy people in Hungary. But the thing I see that there is a curriculum that teachers have to follow, even though they don't agree on it, and we can see crystal clearly that when we learn most in the history of this ethnic minority in our country, and we learn and we are not able to discuss things, and even our teacher said to us that if you not agree with me and if you write the test, that's something which is like considered as according to her racist or like not against her view, she would like give the worst mark, the one, and we're not motivated to have an open discussion about this topic, because many people see Roma people, they think many people like not, I would say not racist, but they have a lot of stereotypes and prejudgments about this community, and education seems like, or in my point of view, education which I received didn't help to move forward and be able to improve the situation.
I'd like to add that I have social sciences as my specialization this year. So I have 3 classes on social sciences, if that's what we call it, and there we discussed the Roma question very well. So that was my first good impression of human rights and the minorities planted in the education system. So for me, the Roma question was well discussed in public school.
Yes.
Do you ever have the impression that your teachers would like to share something with you, for example, about their real opinion on those issues, and they feel constrained, or do you think they are happy to convey you the official program?
Well, we can see crystal clearly that sometimes they are not agree on the thing they must say, but since the current government have implemented changements in the education system, teachers have to follow a really strict curriculum, and they can't really change the way they approach the topics, and there's an ideal way how to teach it, and they just have to follow it, even though it's plainly stupid many times, and they can't really share their point of view. And we also said that we should not do it either, so we also have to just follow the rules and think and say and write whatever the government or the authority wants.
It's like sometimes I share something personal and I step back, like forget it.
And when it happens, they say that we shouldn't mention for the other teachers that they said this personal opinion. So it's very we all have governmental books. So all the schools, public schools, learn from the same textbooks, So they really can't change the perspective on how they approach the topic, because everyone has the same learning material and we have to follow it.
And also the problem is that more than 99% of the students frequent public schools. So in Hungary there's not a big tradition of public elementary or private. There are not too many private schools. Maybe just like the Central European University, which is a university, but other than that, not really. And I think it's really a serious problem.
Yeah, there are private schools. I
Yeah,
know
but they
many
tend
private
to
schools,
be
but in the ranks, the public schools are the highest. So everyone who wants to go in a competitive school, they attend public schools. So we can't really say anything about private schools because there's not many and we have not attended them. So
One last question. Yes,
I have just one question to clarify about public and private schools. Are there many schools which are owned by the church which are private?
I think that the church-owned schools are also public. So there are many schools in connection to the church, Catholic schools mostly, but I think that they are mostly public.
Okay, so Catholic schools are public.
I am not sure. Maybe I don't know if they're public schools, but the main problem with church-owned schools that they receive so much benefits about what non-church-owned schools don't have. So they have more money. The government pays tons of money for each student who attends their school. And for example, there was a problem in a church-owned school in the eastern part of Hungary, where there was a really huge segregation against Roma people. So Roma people couldn't attend the same class as non-Roma students did, and the government didn't do anything because they didn't want to have an argument with the church, which sadly serves really well their interests. So it's much easier for them to just say, okay, they segregate their students, and even though it's just like against the law of our country and the European Union, we won't do anything because if we would do, maybe the church would not support our party and we would not have political power and so on and so on.
And finally, was there anything done about it? Or?
I'm not really sure. Maybe they did something, but many people actually the minister responsible for the education in Hungary said that there's sometimes that segregation should be used because there are some positive aspects of segregation, and for me it was like really maddening because the last time I heard it was maybe in the United States during the 19th century, when there was problems about the slavery, or before the civil rights movements, when they said that black people should go to a different bathroom or to go attend different schools or sit in different place in the bus and it's also the same, and I think they still segregate their students.
The last good question.
Okay.
If I'm right, if I understand it clear, did you said all the students in Hungary must have the same textbooks?
Yeah, exactly.
In
There's
public school.
one or two textbooks.
And can I ask, are you able in lessons use internet or something like that? Learn from different.
Yeah, we are not. We can. So it's not against the law or something, but.
And are you doing it in your lessons?
Mostly in classes like language courses, where in language courses you can choose from various textbooks, but you have to pay a lot for them. And but for example, in literature or in history or in maths,
Biology.
it's not as often it should be. Or like for example, in our school, where like enough computers for it, so there are the resources for that. We can do it, but in a small high school on the countryside, it's just impossible, I would say.
Yeah, but I'd like to add that these public school textbooks, which like everyone uses them, I haven't really met a teacher that said that they were good textbooks, and everyone. It's been not so long that they've been generalized as the textbooks, and the teachers don't really like it, so they always say how better the older textbooks were when because they could choose that. They were like, 20 types of biology textbooks and they could choose which one they preferred, but now everyone has to use the same.
And who is preparing these textbooks? The government?
Yeah.
Like many sometimes teachers, but the government
approves them, so
approves
it's
them,
like through the
ask them.
government.
But there are, for example, history. There are a lot of critics for the textbooks because there were just factual mistakes on it, and they were not. We couldn't use it really well. So, for example, our history teacher asked us to buy for quite a lot of money, high amount of money, another book, which is, yeah, we can buy other books. They're not the official textbook, but there are like extra materials in them, and yeah.
Thank you very much for your honesty in sharing all this information and concerns after all. We will continue with the group from Romania, from Cluj.
In Romania, the educational system, at least at level of high school, has no courses of human rights. We don't speak about human rights. There is a course of civic culture in primary education, but in high school, for example, we don't talk about human rights. And if we ask the professor to tell their opinion about something that is happening in our country, they will not take us an advice. What should we have to do to stop something that, in our opinion, is not good? Also, the curricula is very rigid. The professors don't have the liberty to choose how they teach. They have to I don't know how to say.
They are showing just a matter of facts. The information is not interpretative, and there is not debate in our classes. They show just dates, or I don't know, math, or even in Romanian literature, they show us an opinion of another person. They don't ask our opinion about an opera or something else. And the problem is that the communist era is still pregnant in Romania now, and also the religion. There's a very conservative atmosphere at schools. They do not talk about, I don't know, Occidental, Western European views of family, like LGBT values or something. And they put accents on religion, especially because most of the teachers are, I don't know, old, and they're young, and most of their lives they live in the communist era, or the era before we entered in the EU zone.
How do you define communism in this perspective? Like a certain type of teaching?
Yes, it's about the relationship between students and teacher. We always related to the professor as we are inferior to them, and mostly our opinion doesn't matter. If we say something that is in disaccord with what they think, they will say us that we don't have rights, we don't we don't can do anything. If, for example, if I have a situation in which I consider that I wasn't treated well, for example, I couldn't do something about that. I couldn't complain.
They say that we are young, we are not wise enough to consider the situation, they are not experienced enough.
Lucia? I'm wondering, would you say that professors just mention that you don't have rights, or would you say that it affects your grade if you do?
Not directly. Not directly, but this is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I could present another part of the Romanian education, because I was really lucky being in a really liberal school. It was the only high school for Hungarian minority in my county, so they were much more liberal. And although we didn't have formal official education about human rights, we always had some professors, some young professors who told about our rights, our obligations, our rights as a minority, and we also had a biology professor who volunteered for sexual education, and we also had European rights, education in European rights, because we had a program made by one of the members of the European Parliament who took us to Brussels for free for a weekend. And if we wanted to participate in this, we had to learn about the history of European Union and the rights of European Union, and took a test. And if we had good results, then we could go to the European Union. So that was really nice. And we actually had a non-formal education of the rights.
Yes.
How important are public schools in your country then, considering the stronger communist heritage you were talking about, much more than private ones? Are there still private schools, or very few?
Are, but very few, and they are seen worse than the public ones, because people aren't willing to pay for education, and if they are willing, they prefer to go abroad, not in Romania. So people think that it's better to go, I don't know, to UK and pay for that education, and rather than staying in Romania and paying for that.
But this is only valid for university, I guess, moving, or also for the high school.
I don't know.
I think mostly for the universities, but for example in Cluj, if I know right, we have some private schools which are really good, and they have a much more non-formal education. The English school, or
yeah.
Transylvania College.
Yeah. And if I interfere a little bit, actually there is a tendency in Romania for middle class to pay for education, because public school education is not very good. So if you have money that allow you to pay for your children's education, then most likely you will pay. But it's expensive. And it comes as a new trend, because public education got worse and worse in years. And we can see this information from data. So basically, parents are like crying for help and going to private schools now. But it wasn't this tendency a few years ago.
And you don't really have private schools in any county in Romania. For example, in my county, I think there is no private schools, so only public ones.
Yes, Max?
I would be interested, like,
would you say that whatever you learned at school regarding human rights, democracy, even though in a formalist way, or you learned in extracurricular activities, influenced your perception of any concrete situations in life, of some political events, of some news you read in the media, so that you perceived, for instance, something that was linked to, I don't know, corruption or elections or some other publicly relevant topic, differently with that background knowledge about human rights and democracy?
I think at my school we talked a lot about our election system and about the parties for the minorities, and we always were taught about anything about the rights of minorities, but not the rights in general. So only in this topic of the elections of parties for minorities, only in this topic it helped me understand better, but in other subjects not really.
In Romania there isn't, I don't know, political education, and people tend to take what see on news, or I don't know, take it for good, and they even don't know how the election works, or how the structure of the parliament or the government. There is a lackage of knowledge about this domain.
Are there any other questions for the Romanian group?
I would like to ask, if I may. I would like to ask that if there are no initiatives in education as itself to bring any lessons of human rights inside, is these initiatives in let's say non-governmental organizations or in media, or is anybody in Romania do something with this situation?
Yes, there are non-governmental, or at the university there are classes about about human rights, and recently it's beginning to go even to the high school area, but people aren't willing for a change. I don't know. The atmosphere in Romania is, for a better understanding, there are differences even between the areas in Romania, between Transylvania or Moldavia, and some people are willing for a change. Some people see the European Union as a bad thing. They don't want their history or patriarchal atmosphere to be changed. They don't see the need of another country to give even some advice on how people should see the society. It's even at the level of the country, it's a debate.
And another issue, it can be the fact that we have organizations which want to come to schools and educate the students about rights and European Union and things like that, but mostly the teachers don't want to accept organizations from outside because they don't want to give up their classes in, I don't know, in one day for another person to come to teach us about rights, and the students doesn't really want to stay after school to listen to the organizations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elia, we are really short on time, so maybe we can continue afterwards during our break. We will now listen to the group from Slovakia and their perspective.
So, hello everyone, I'm Katarina, and I will probably have much different points of view because I went to Catholic secondary grammar school, which belonged to church. So, well, the first thing I want to mention that I'm from East Slovakia, not from Bratislava, and I think this is the biggest problem in our country, that every important issue is discussed only in our capital city and not in our part, and it also touch our education. So, well, I have the civics science I have twice a week, and in the grammar year I have 4s because I went to graduate from that, and I was, if I heard those opinions, I can say I was very, very lucky because I have a very good teacher, and also she was very open-minded, so she tried to give us as much as she can the opportunities. So because of her, I was much more involved of these human rights issues. I also went to Olympics of human rights, so it touched me more than my friends and also classmates, and I have the feeling that they're not interested in those topics because they don't see the future of it, that they have feelings that they have everything and they don't miss much. So it's like they see the future in law, in medicine and in science, and not in political science or any differences. And also, as I said, she was my teacher of civics. She was pretty open-minded, so it means we also work with non-governmental organizations. So it was much different than I heard. So this is my point of view, I would say.
Okay, if I add something to my colleague. I didn't know that we have so similar situation, because I also attend Catholic grammar school in Žilina, so not in Bratislava, in capital, but in the northern Slovakia. And I would like to emphasize that the situation on the civics lessons really depends on the teacher. Here is big space for a teacher, and he or she can use it in any way. So he or she can maybe influence students in negative position against European Union, let's say, but also in a positive way. That was my case. And I would like to say that also here was mentioned critical thinking. And the strong point is that in Slovakia here are a lot of initiatives from non-governmental organizations, from medias, and so on. So the things are moving in the right way, and as we can see, we can look at the results of recent elections in don't know really how to say that, something like local assemblies, if you can imagine that, and the extremism was really defeated. Here was big danger of winning of extremist party. If you maybe watch the situation in Slovakia, but it was defeated. So here is shown that the things are moving, and we should only continue in building a critical thinking, and it can be done maybe via good teachers of civics, as it was in my case. That's from my side, I think.
Any questions?
maybe I don't have a question, but here is another Slovakia student.
Yeah, I'm the only high school student from Slovakia, so I probably should express my opinion about the topic. I think that all the issues that are present in Slovak education system were mentioned. I mean, the situation in Czech Republic is more or less the same, exactly the same. I mean, the official public curriculum mentions human rights only when discussing law, besides family law. When discussing the continental law of Slovakia, we also talk about the human rights aspect of the legal system, and then there are organizations like Olympiáda ľudských práv, the Human Rights Olympiad, which engage in the informal, the non-governmental side of the human rights education. That's it.
Thank you to all of you for having been so sincere in sharing this what seems to be a gloomy painting of the situation of human rights in our countries and human rights education as its reflection. We are important in the European Union. We are members of the European Union, all our countries. We have an important number of citizens of economic capacity. I think we matter, and we can definitely and we should work for improvement. Maybe we can try in these days or with the dissemination process that will follow to learn from one another and try to develop the tools so as to communicate better and overcome, at least to a certain point, the tendency that is rather going down than up when it comes to this topic. I think that not, maybe it's only my opinion, but not all of us are willing to, even if we would have the financial resources to send our children and our dear ones to private schools always, but also to have the opportunity to build bridges of communication between the private and public sector when it comes to education, and not to build enclaves, but rather to broaden the horizons of one another. Thank you very much, and enjoy your meal, and hopefully we'll continue on a